Welcome to the Ideal Investor Show. This is the podcast where we help you challenge your mindset and discover where you are. Tired of stories about other people's success? We can help you change your life, determine your time freedom point, and join us on the journey to financial success. Let's go. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Ideal Investor Show, where every so often we bring you really cool guests. And today we have an extra cool one. Brandon, who allowed me to be on his podcast, is on our podcast today. And he has a really, really interesting background that we're going to talk about. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Axel, what's happening? I appreciate you for having me on. I'm excited to be here with you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for coming and spending time with us. So before we dive into things around money and your experience with investing and credit and scores and all that good stuff, tell the audience a little bit, how did you end up getting to where you are today and kind of what's the origin story for Brandon?
Okay, so I guess the high level, all the success is going to be, we have about 10 million in real estate assets today. No money into any of my deals. We like to do the burst strategy typically, but we also have flip, Airbnb, long-term rentals, ground up construction, hard money lending, and so forth. So we're in syndications and we're in 4 different states: New Jersey, Ohio, Arizona, and California. And so I live in San Diego. We collect about $50,000 a month off of quote unquote passive income. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no such thing as the passive income on the stuff that I'm actually doing. There's a little bit of time needed for everything to make sure that, the systems and processes aren't broken and that we are in place. However, I do have a lot of time freedom. And so I am very blessed. But, my overnight success that many would see on social media, it's been 10, 11 years in the making. It took a very long time to get to this point in life. What I would say is real estate has changed my life, but credit was the catalyst to actually do it. We built out a brand, Credit Counsel Elite, that we've been helping business owners nationwide since 2017. How to be able to get more capital, $2, $3, $4, or even $500,000 in new capital with interest rates as low as 0% interest, and be able to repeat this process almost every 6 months. So they can get more capital to be able to take down more territory and to be able to hit their goals and dreams. And so I grew up in New Jersey, a single parent mother. She was diagnosed manic depressive bipolar. So we grew up on food stamps, like American poor, very blessed. But you got to realize, once you start traveling the world and you see other countries poor, it's a whole different level.
Right.
American poor is rich. We had Section 8, so housing was paid for, Social Security about $1,000 a month, and food stamps, help from local churches and schools. So very blessed. But at a young age as well, I realized, without having a father figure, I realized hey, my mom can't supply these things for me that I need. And so I'm going to want to get my butt in gear and actually figure out how to get money so that I can buy the quads, the dirt bikes, the things that I want at a young age. So I started looking for a job when I was 9. I did a lot of yard work and things in the neighborhood. But I finally got my first official job at age 12. And I just went down a rabbit hole of getting more money and being able to save up. But I also found myself on the wrong tracks as well.
Understood. And I saw some of it in your bio, and I don't know if you really want or need to go down that rabbit hole. What you said earlier is that, you kind of did the different versions, starting with the burr and the flipping and stuff like that. Can you describe a little bit the transition from when you got into real estate initially and how you basically grew it from there into maybe less hands-on investments?
Yeah. So in the beginning, I fell in love with the burst strategy. I did 4 hours every single day of education, books, podcasts just like this, and YouTube, to be able to get the proper education and that foundation piece that I needed. After reading and getting educated, and I started implementing, that was level 2 of making all of those mistakes that I just learned in those books and podcasts.
Yeah.
I made exceptions for everything. I really put my foot in my mouth multiple times, giving contractors cash up front. Even though I use credit cards, I made every mistake under the sun. So, but I fell in love with the burst strategy. I figured out that's exactly what I wanted. Next, I figured out the location. I found in Ohio, there was job growth, population growth, and something unique about the area. And those three things I always recommend for investors getting started or in general. That's what I look for today.
We love Ohio too for exactly that reason. And you know, sometimes people say, yeah, it's not a super fast growing, it's not, you know, like the Bay Area or Silicon Valley or stuff like that. But ultimately, I found, and I've been doing it for a while, and it sounds like you have too, that is really like steady as she goes, like a steady, continuous, dependable growth is ultimately really preferable.
Yeah, and it comes down to what your wants and needs are. So over in Ohio, it's not going to appreciate like crazy like it will in San Diego. However, it will cash flow very well. You can have little to no money into those deals and it cash flows very good and that, you get 4 or 5, 10 properties under your belt. Well, you can collect an extra $10,000 a month, and that could be your goal that you're looking to, get out of your day job or retire or whatever it may be. Instead, out in California, less cash flow typically, unless you're doing Airbnb. However, the appreciation out here, which you should never bet on, it should always be icing on the cake, in my opinion. However, it can be very good over just a short period of time, a few years. You can make hundreds of thousands, if not
Right, but
millions.
I mean, I totally agree with you, and it's really a matter of, are you looking for an investment strategy that basically, from a legacy perspective, will always have real estate in it or not, right? Because the one thing is, for me, appreciation is always a little bit similar to investing in stocks, right? Like you're looking to find the right area or slash company, and if that company is the right one and it's doing the business the right way, growing in value, and you can sell it, and now you have the money, right? And I have a house in San Diego myself, and I agree with you totally. The appreciation is amazing. On the other hand, if you just say, okay, I have this house now and it has appreciated massively, unless you want to leave, the next house or similar house is going to cost you the same amount of money. Now, obviously, this is now your money that you don't have to finance. So that's definitely a benefit. But when I look at it more from an arch or like a perspective of a strategy, like you said, to generate cash flow, so you have time freedom while just having, you know, the money to exchange one property to the next and not having to increase your mortgage is one thing, but having continuously growing cash flow, and with it, I think, I mean, you guys do it with basically these credit cards and rolling them over and have very little interest. But even if somebody does the traditional mortgage thing, ultimately the tenants pay off the properties and the cash flow is continuously growing, at least at inflation or more. I think it both works. It's just a matter, like you said, of what am I really looking for, right? What do I want to have, an income stream, or do I want to have more like in the stock market, a value increase?
I agree. It depends with certain individuals, like what their end goal
Right.
is. And so I don't necessarily look at it as stocks for appreciation, just because in California, for example, or certain markets, if very little does it actually tick back and kind of pull back. In many cases, over a 5, 10 year period, you are always going to see appreciation up. And how I look at appreciation, kind of like you said, instead of like you only have a couple options, right? You would have to sell 1031 exchange or borrow against. And many people don't realize that, I like to look at the borrowing power.
Right.
Some people think that there's caps on those borrowing power. When you know how to play the game with the banks and in the credit space, financial literacy that we teach at Credit Counsel Elite, like that information, if I have equity in the property, I know how to be able to tap into that and capitalize on it without selling the property, without, still actually having controlling ownership and getting the cash flow, get the tax advantages, and be able to leverage off of it so that I can compound my success and keep buying more assets to stack up even more. So that's what we've done over the years.
Is, in your opinion, if you're working with clients, and I know that maybe the real estate is more a personal thing for you, or maybe not necessarily that much out with the clients versus the credit elite stuff, do you feel there should be a limit on how far on leverage somebody extends themselves on?
For sure, yeah. There definitely should be. I think there's most will have 80% or so, give or take, on the leverage that's out there. Now, every once in a while, there's some crazy lenders that will come up with something astronomical, right? And doing 100% financing, 100% rehab, everything, And so you usually pay a premium for those situations. However, I think it's really crucial for all investors to just identify the difference between good debt and bad debt.
Right.
We never give anybody permission to go out and get a bunch of new funding and then buy the $20,000 Gucci sweatshirt. That's not acceptable to me.
Yeah, right.
However, if you buy assets that actually get you tax advantages, cash flow, appreciation, get you security and safety, I would never talk somebody out of that. Even if it's costing them money and they're in debt because of it, that's good debt. And so that over time will turn into something extremely beneficial. But you just got to be wise with your finances. And I'm a firm believer in having backup plans as well. Many people that mess up in real estate, in my opinion, is that they start off with plan A. And then when plan A doesn't work out, they don't jump to plan B. Like that would be logical. They don't know plan B, C, D. They
Right.
jump to plan Z right away. And then they're sinking, they're losing, and then they're hating real estate. But if you get well-rounded education on all the different ways to make money in real estate, there's 30 plus ways and you can really compound it and have backup plans and get very creative to make sure that you're not sinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And I use the term plan A and then other plans too. And I've come to the conclusion, and it's not just for real estate, that oftentimes people, especially when they don't want to spend time on the education, it's really
Yep.
more a black and white thing. If it all
Yep.
works, then they gung ho and it's all white and wave the flags and stuff. And if something doesn't work, there is no nuance, there's no shades of gray or anything, it's just black. And
Yep.
never touch it again, and it's bad, and tell everybody else that it's bad, and they
Tell
got
everybody
burned.
else.
And so
Yeah.
now what I meant with the leverage limit is if you really think about this case where you say, okay, I have a property and it has appreciated really well, and now I'm basically taking a loan on the equity and take that money and use it as my down payment, and the rest, like I do another 80-20 deal with the bank. Now, really, if you think about it now, this property is actually 100% financed, right? Partially through the equity loan and partially through the regular mortgage loan. And
The
if you
the
keep doing,
difference is you have two properties now.
no, I agree with you. I'm just saying, like how often would somebody be wise to do that? Because obviously you have the obligation, right? So if
Yeah.
you take that second property and let's say, okay, instead of having $750 or $800 a month payment and maybe $150, $200, $300 cash flow, now your cash flow goes to serve the equity loan. And yes, you have the asset against it, but if, for example, your tenant doesn't pay, the question ultimately becomes, can you basically cover for all these different obligations that you made? That's what I meant with
Correct.
the extension, right? If you say, okay, think this through, you could do this like, I don't know, 10 times, like you said, like
Yeah.
basically like a
A
waterfall.
million. It's infinite. Yeah.
Right. Problem is that theoretically, if we get some economic development where for whatever reason a number of your tenants don't pay, even if it's just for a few months. And I know a friend of mine who used to have like 83 properties in this kind of a setup, and then an unusually high number of people got into financial trouble. Admittedly, one of the problems was that he had way too many in one area, right? And they were all dependent on the same kind of industry, having jobs there and getting the money payment for their rent. But in any case, what I meant, yes, leverage is a good thing. I think using equity actively is a good thing, but you also want to always keep in mind, okay, what is the ability to cover?
Yeah, Axel, it's such a great question. In my opinion, it all comes down to the education. Somebody that
Right.
is properly educated, they're going to be a good steward of those funds. If you invest $1 and you get back two every time, then it would be wise to keep investing that dollar. So the same thing with your friend, that example, it sounds like he did a poor job in from what I understand, filling vacancies. And so when issues happen, if he has everybody in all one area, it's all one job, industry, or he should have evicted them sooner, replaced it with other people. There's so many different things. Also, keep your numbers in check. If you are taking that much risk in all one location, all one type of tenant with the same job, have you looked into that job industry? Is it going to be around forever? Is it calculating extra expenses, capital expenditures, vacancies, maintenance? Most people, when they talk about cash flow, quote unquote. My mortgage and insurance is this much, and then I get it rents out for this much, and that's my difference, a couple $100. That is not cash flow. That is a risky business right there. Instead, you should be adding up also, well, what about the vacancies? What is the going rate? What is the extreme rate that could happen if you're taking that risk with that industry in that location? What about maintenance? What about capital expenditures like roof, water heater, stuff like that? Like there's so many other things that you need to take into consideration so that you can truly have that stuff to the side. And then, okay, I'm okay with the difference of a couple $100.
Absolutely. And I don't want to beleaguer this too much, but he had done all those things. And I really appreciate that you listed them and pointed them out, because I totally agree. And I think we're both the same. We want to always educate people as much as possible so they're really aware of what they're doing. In his case, I mean, sometimes you also have some unlucky circumstances. So the first 3 months he was using the reserves that he had built, just like you were describing it. But what actually happened is everybody at that time when this thing happened wanted to evict the people. And so what used to take 2 or 3 months started taking 5 or 6 months. And when you too far extended, that was actually the lesson overall, without going into too much detail. He ultimately just kind of flamed out. His reserves were consumed and the portfolio was too big and too leveraged. It's not a matter of having too many properties. I totally agree with you. It's more a matter of how aware are you how you're actually allocating the money, and keep a reasonable balance, right? And understand what cash flow is and so forth. Now, one of the things that our audience might actually wonder, and I know this is really your specialty and we should spend a little bit of time on it, is when you say, okay, we can help you apply for several $100,000 worth of credit cards that can be 0% for 12 to 18 months. You and I have talked about this too. I think one of the obvious questions is, okay, how do I make sure that it remains to be that way? Maybe not necessarily with the same card, obviously, because those 12 to 18 months expire at some point. But I could imagine that our audience members would say, well, yeah, initially that's really cool. But what happens, like, how can I make sure that I always have the money at this interest rate? Or can I?
So yes, you can. And every 6 months, you can get the exact same amount of funding or more. You should be improving the techniques and the education. Your first mass supply, a mass supply for the listeners, what I'm talking about is it's an application sequence. When done correctly, you can apply for anywhere from 10 to 50 plus credit cards or even lines of credit and so forth. Any bank products and services that the banks offer, and you can get a 90% approval odds by doing these techniques properly, because there's 45 plus moving metrics on how these banks and lenders are judging you. So at the end of the day, every 6 months is kind of the rule of thumb where you can do this again and again, every 6 months per person. So say you have your wife, you do it today, 3 months later, she does it. And then 3 months after that, you're good to go to do it again. And then 3 months after that, she can do it again. So every 3 months, you guys are doing this because you have 2 people now. So basically, the 0% interest starts off at anywhere from 6 months to 24 months. On average, it's about 18 months. However, after you take advantage of that once, they keep on giving you these offers. And so 9 times out of 10, you can get them extended on the current credit lines, or you can just apply and get more and keep on doing this. So over time, you can keep the ball rolling and extension to be able to borrow the most amount of capital at the lowest interest rates.
Are you then actually repaying existing cards with new lines, or are you just extending and expanding the credit line?
Yeah. So after you pay off your credit lines, you should always ask for extensions. Once you're a good steward of the funding, you should always ask for credit limit increases and get more and more of it. However, yes, you should. This isn't going to be for a 30-year fixed. It's not that type of space. These are for short-term investment opportunities where it's either to jump into a BRRRR project, a fix and flip, what have you, or even your own business. If you have a little fire of a business going on right now and it's doing well, but you're missing out on opportunities because you need more capital to be able to hire on the best, to be able to take out the competition for marketing, for deliverables, for fulfillment, keeping up with inventory, for all of these things. If you already have the fire going and you're missing out on opportunity just because you need more capital, this is where the credit comes into play. And once you get 2, 3, 4, or 5, $600,000 in new capital, as low as 0% interest, you can leverage this and grow and scale. So yes, if you get 400,000, for example, but you need 300,000 for your business or the next real estate deal, you can take out, instead of just taking out 300,000, take out 350,000, so that now you have 50,000 extra that you're going towards your minimum payments to keep up with, and you are leveraging. It's all on the business side. Your personal score is not affected.
Is there some exit strategy at the end that you recommend?
An extra strategy, you should always have, like, I'm a big firm believer of backup plans, right? So there should always be an exit strategy. You should always have the capital one way or another to be able to pay off what you've borrowed. This isn't,
Right. No, I
again,
meant like, I mean, you showed these kind of impressive two packages of cards. Is there any point where you say, okay, then you stabilize at a certain level and that's then what you're going to keep? And obviously, the more you have, and if you kind of, have the business pay them back, it's also good for the score and all those other kind of little fringe benefits that come with that. But would you really constantly keep like these two packages, or is there a certain happy medium number that you would ultimately go to?
for the number of amount of credit cards,
Yeah.
no, it's infinite. You keep going. So the world record for the most active open credit cards is like 17,000 or 1,700 something, like 1,800. It's pretty
And
impressive.
you need a bookkeeper to make all the minimum payments.
So when I say I have like 100 plus cards, I'm not utilizing every single one of them right now. So every year you want to make just a minimum charge on it so that it stays open and active. But besides that, so I just have a reminder on my phone to remind me, go to the dollar store, and spend an hour there cranking out 50 cards, so that they stay open and active. However, all of the, maybe I'm using 15 different cards at a time actively for different businesses or growing and scaling, leveraging.
I'm assuming there is a little bit of a story that I would love if you can concisely tell it. How did you come up with that? Did you just say, okay, I want to have the world record in credit cards, or what was the the story or
No,
the trigger for you to get started with that?
no. And just for clarity, I don't have the world record in credit cards. This other gentleman does. And then the world record for the most amount of credit cards approved in 1 year's time frame is 143. Now check this out. The cool part behind that is his best friend. Now this comes into the power of your influence. You are the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. That's why community, it's such a big thing. His best friend ended up getting 138. It's pretty impressive. That, I mean, just 5 shy. It's
Right. Yeah.
incredible, And so success isn't always taught. A lot of times it's just caught being in that atmosphere. How I got started in this is when there's a will, there's a way. Like I said, I grew up American poor. I didn't, when I started realizing I wanted to jump into real estate investing, I was doing door-to-door Kirby vacuum cleaner sales. It was $3,500 vacuum cleaner I was selling door to door. I got recruited by knocking on somebody's door and jumped into this real estate investment company. And I saw all the systems in place back in 2011, and I got so much inspiration because of the impact we were making, the money that was being made, and it just looked amazing. It looked awesome. So I started going down that rabbit hole afterwards for the 2 years, 4 hours every day. And eventually you get to the point of like, hey, I got some opportunities I want to submit offers on. Oh, shoot. How am I going to get the money for it? How am I supposed to do that? And that's where I ended up when the builder's away. I had no idea that anybody would ever trust me with money. So that was totally out of the question. Like, private money lender, nobody's ever going to give me money. Second, couldn't go to family or friends because I didn't have any with any money. That was totally out of the question. So I looked at my credit cards because I was working in a restaurant at the time, making 30, 40 grand a year. That wasn't going to qualify either. So instead, I went to my credit cards because I did mistakenly do a bunch of things right with my credit cards by paying them off on time every 6 months, requesting a credit limit increase. So I had certain credit cards at a young age at 60, 70,000 in credit lines. And so I just called them saying, hey, I got this opportunity I want to capitalize on. How do I actually take the credit line and liquidate it into cash into my bank account? Oh, and by the way, I got a poor mindset. I'm really cheap. How do I get 0%? Like, I'm not trying to pay any a cash advance 30% fee on that. I'm not doing that. I can't do that. how can I get 0%? And then when you just keep on being persistent, and I went down a rabbit hole of books as well, and mentors to be able to learn some of these strategies as well.
And I think that's inspiring because it shows you that it's not really a matter of where you start, but how much you apply yourself. And I know you for being somebody who just never gives up, and you go after stuff and then ultimately be successful. So if people are intrigued about what you do and what you have been describing, how can they get in touch with you?
Best way to get a hold of me be on Instagram. It's Brandon Elliott Investments. Otherwise, check out our Instagram page, Credit Counsel Elite. We have a lot of amazing tips and tricks on there to make it really just like a no-brainer and very simplified. However, if you really are intrigued, or you're like, hey, what the hell is this guy Brandon talking about? Then you can check out creditcounselelite.com. That's www.creditcounselelite.com. There's a 10-minute video on there that explains more in detail, probably better than what I'm doing today.
Yeah, it is actually a great video. I watched it, and I have to say it really gives quite a comprehensive, at least initial description of what's going on to get somebody to say, could this work for me, and then go from there. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's going to most likely answer a lot of your questions that you have currently, but afterwards also spark even better questions for you to ask. And then so it can make the most of our time. After that, you can book a call with me or our team to really go over your particular situation, where you're at currently, where you're looking to go, and then how we can help you get there to the end. And at the end of the day, it's just a second opinion call, what it looks like to work with us. At the end, we will always give you a list of 10 banks that we have used multiple times to get up to 50K from each one. We want to bless you with that regardless, but it's a no-brainer just for jumping on a call with us.
And I can encourage everybody to do that. So Brandon is a really good guy. He went on a call with me, and invited me to his podcast and came to us. And so just all around a really good opportunity. So with all that being said, I mentioned in the beginning, we have always like one or two questions that I ask everybody that are not really directly related to money. So the first one would be, if you could meet anybody, who would it be and why?
Ooh, that's good. Yeah, I think Elon Musk. Elon Musk, just the way that he thinks, it's just so extraordinary. I just want to be able to spend some time with him and pick his brain a little bit more. That'd be wild.
Is there any particular thing where people haven't asked him that you would ask?
I think just being able to kind of experience it firsthand, it's a different touch to it. Kind of like a vision board, you know, like I think it's important to have the dream cars, the dream houses, the dream vacations on there. But I also think it's important to go test drive the cars and, you know, have that touch factor. So when it's in person, it's, you know, the views are much better in person versus on a camera or watching somebody else go through it.
Totally agree with you. So then the last question is, if you had a time machine, where would you go and why?
Oh, that's good. You know, I don't know. I'd probably go to like ancient Egypt. I'm just very intrigued by original civilization and how things all started. I've been going down rabbit holes of that lately, and Nikola Tesla and just all the different things that are out there. I think it's pretty intriguing to me.
Sounds really interesting. I've always been intrigued about it, especially about the ancient stuff, because some of it is just so unbelievable how they were able to do that. Cool. So Brandon, thank you again for coming on the show. Any last words? You want to repeat the website one more time?
First off, for having me, Axel. Keep doing what you're doing, man. This is the impact that you're making is transformational for so many. Guys, I highly encourage action is the takeaway that you should take from this. All the cool things that I've done, there's been a lot of trial and errors, and my biggest contribution to that is just taking action and failing forward. And if I can do it, a misfit from New Jersey, you know, without a father and, you know, all these different things, if I can do it, you can 100% do it. It just comes down to taking action. So check out Credit Counsel Elite today. That's www.creditcounselelite today. And then feel free to follow us even on our podcast as well, Ready, Set, Go, Real Estate Investing Podcast. A new episode drops every Monday. So, and then we'll see you soon.
Cool. Again, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.